Hello, everyone. Welcome to Against the Fraud, where we help people better understand whistleblowers, fraud investigations, and the False Claims Act. I am your host, Joseph Del Soin, and today I am joined by Jason Marcus, partner and co-founder of Bracker and Marcus. Jason has worked almost exclusively with whistleblowers and False Claims Act matters since 2008, and he has also spent a considerable amount of time examining the whistleblower landscape and how it's changing, including data-driven cases and what has been described as the modern whistleblower. Today, we're going to take a look and talk about how people and data uncover fraud, what is something worth investigating, and what potential whistleblowers should understand about the process. This conversation is for educational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. Every situation is different, and anyone who believes they may have information about fraud should speak directly with a qualified attorney. Jason, welcome to Against the Fraud. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Joseph. Glad to be here. I appreciate it. I'm doing well.
Okay, no problem at all. No problem. And you have a long track record. You have worked almost exclusively with whistleblowers and the False Claims Act since 2008. What made this area of law the place where you wanted to build your career?
Yeah, it's just a really exciting area. For one thing, as a lawyer, every time you meet somebody new, you go into a party and you tell somebody you're a lawyer, they give you this look of concern. Are you someone I can trust? Are you one of the good guys or the bad guys? And when I tell them that I represent whistleblowers in these kinds of cases, they always light up and they're always like, oh, you're one of the good guys. Like, you're always doing good work for the government, for the taxpayer. And I love that about what I do. It's intellectually challenging. These are high dollar cases, what they call bet the farm cases. If one of these cases sometimes goes to trial and a defendant loses, it's everything. So they've got the best and brightest. They've got the Harvard educated big law firm lawyers, and I enjoy that. I like the challenge of that. So the people I work with are great. Whistleblowers are amazing, human beings generally. So yeah, it's just been a really fun area, and I'm happy to have fallen into it.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I got a fun fact from your bio. It looks like you finished Tulane in 2 years and then graduated as the youngest person in your law school class. What was the rush to be a lawyer?
Some of us just don't appreciate childhood, I think. I was ready to go. I was kind of just wanting to get out in the world and be an adult and experience those things. And of course, now I'm, older and looking back, I regret some of that. But no, it was always the goal for the most part was to become a lawyer. So, one track mind, I guess.
2 years, well, that's really ambitious. I wish I had that. Now, was there a first case or client that made you see that the mission was actually real? Was there any case that stands out to you?
Yeah, and it was actually one of my smaller cases. We represented a office worker for a dentist here in Atlanta. He was one of the few dentists in the area that accepted Medicaid, and so he sort of had this patient population under his control. He could almost do anything he wanted with them because they didn't really have a choice. He was the dentist, and he would, frankly, he would pull teeth because he wanted to bill for extra removals. He would do all kinds of just harm to them, frankly, and only for the purpose of billing. And it was disgusting. And we were able to bring a False Claims Act case against him. I compare the False Claims Act to how they got Al Capone, right? He's a murderer. He was a bootlegger. He did all these terrible things, but they got him on tax evasion. And this was kind of how I saw this was, well, I can't do anything about how he treats his patients, but by going through the False Claims Act and showing his fraudulent billing, we were able to shut down that practice. And I think that's better for the community.
Okay, nice. And what keeps the work interesting after nearly 2 decades of doing it?
That's a really good question. On the one hand, I think I've kind of mastered the False Claims Act, but the False Claims Act cases themselves are always different. Something new is always coming through the door that you have to learn about. Sometimes there's entirely new areas. I mean, for most of my career, healthcare litigation was something like 90% of False Claims Act cases, and it's still a big part, but now the government is very interested in customs fraud and cybersecurity fraud. I've kind of have a almost side practice full time of doing CARES Act fraud from COVID. So new areas come up, but even then, even healthcare, something just walked in the other day that I'd never seen before. And so another opportunity to learn not a new area of the law, but kind of a new area of medicine. And so that always, keeps it interesting. It's not like I'm going out and doing, another car accident today, it's my 1000th car accident. It's always a little bit different.
Right. Okay, nice. Yeah. So that's the positive, sounds like. What's the most frustrating part of the practice?
I would say that's actually kind of a recent development, which is AI. AI has everybody kind of thinking they're geniuses, right? It was kind of there's always a long joke about people going to the doctor's offices with their WebMD printouts and saying, I think I have this, cancer or what have you, because WebMD told them. And now they're doing the same thing with lawyers and saying, hey, I've got this case. ChatGPT says it's a brilliant case. So that can be it's hard because, people were coming in, telling us their story, and we had a pretty good idea of whether it was a good case or not. We could explain it to them. We could explain, the pros and cons. But now they're coming in already feeling very positive about their case and, almost offended if you don't want their case. And the other thing about it is they want to sound professional. They want to sound knowledgeable. And so they have AI write up what their case is.
Right.
And sometimes AI misses the boat. It doesn't understand it. Whereas if I'm just having a conversation with you, Joseph, about your area of practice and what you're seeing every day, we're able to figure out what the fraud is and not, have a bunch of hallucinated facts or, considerations. And so AI has actually made our work tougher, I think, at least as far as dealing with the whistleblowers.
Okay. Now, when people hear whistleblower, they often picture an employee with inside information. Is that still the case? Is that still accurate? Picture of a modern day whistleblower?
Yeah, that's the classic whistleblower. That's, in my opinion, your best whistleblower. They're the ones who know what's going on. It can be very hard otherwise that's the whole point of the statute, right? Is you need an insider to see what's going on and to disclose this fraud that the government otherwise would not have found. But there is a whole new batch of whistleblowers now coming out, what we'll call the modern whistleblower, who are not insiders. They are competitors. They are, a lot of the times, they're what we call data miners. They're third parties who have no relationship to the entity, and they're going through, for example, Medicare billing data and saying, oh, here's somebody who's billing more for this code than they should be. And so they're able to essentially investigate cases on their own. Now they're missing pieces of those cases a lot of the time. There's a lot that they don't know. They can't identify witnesses necessarily. They don't have the smoking guns, don't have any emails, things like that. But it's a great, frankly, start of a case. And we've seen a lot of success in the last few years coming from people just going through the data and finding people who look suspicious.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, when it comes to data mining relator, I apologize. What exactly is that?
Yeah, so data miner it's kind of an industry term for the people who are just, combing the data. So I've represented a handful in Paycheck Protection Program cases. So during COVID, when it first started, everyone was, worried about getting laid off. So the government spent hundreds of billions of dollars to giving them to employers, making sure that they had money that their employees could, especially particularly small businesses was the goal. And what we've had data miners who have found a number of businesses that did not qualify, that were ineligible because they were too large. Frankly, a lot of them are owned by massive multinational conglomerates who had no business getting this money. They didn't need the money. And so we've had a lot of success bringing cases. And again, they don't know anything about these companies. They are just going through the data. And we have, the folks who are computer scientists who know how to, data analyze. And then we have people who have investigative journalists who just, this is what he's always done, is he's gone out and found these kinds of things and reported on it. We even have, frankly, a gentleman who's just a concerned citizen who was reading his newspaper after retirement and saw a list of local companies that had gotten loans and said, oh, these guys shouldn't have gotten this money. So anybody can do it. And now with AI, the tools are there, especially to kind of help you go through that if you know what you're looking for.
Okay, that's interesting, because I think some people think that you have to work within an organization in order to be a whistleblower or data miner, and it sounds like that isn't really the case. You could see something and then get active and get involved.
Yeah, and in the past, the government was not fond of these kinds of cases because, again, they're missing. The False Claims Act is about fraud. It's not about mistakes, and It's hard to tell from the data sometimes. Oh, this person just didn't know what code to bill, and they were billing the wrong thing. And so we don't have that element usually with data miners. But in the last year, the government has come out and welcomed data miners. They have a new program that they call the Focus Initiative, basically saying, hey, if you've got something, come to us. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss how you came about it, figure out if there's a weakness in your case. But again, they're looking for any way they can to stem the tide of fraud. And it's difficult.
Okay. Yeah, that leads perfectly into my next question. What can an outsider see in public data that an insider may never notice? Is there any differences between the two to bring value?
So, well, and frankly, yeah, I mean, they both have their pros and cons. Over the years, we've had a lot of insiders. And again, it's only recent that data has really been published in this way. And so we had a lot of insiders who came forward and they just don't know the extent of the fraud. Hey, I'm a nurse and I see my doctor is circling this code that doesn't belong. Well, how often is that happening? I don't know. I've seen him do it once or twice.
Right.
Okay. Well, he's probably doing it a lot, but does a lot mean 100 patients or does it mean 10,000 patients? What is the damages in your case? And nobody wants to put themselves at risk filing a lawsuit that's worth a few $1,000s, right? So now with the data, it's the opposite. Kind of we only see how much is the doctor billing this code. And so they are able to, again, determine kind of the extent of the fraud, if there is a fraud, but they don't have that knowledge. They don't see the doctor circling that code, right? So they don't really know what's happening inside. So what's kind of amazing sometimes is we have both. We have the insider now who comes forward with the knowledge, and then either they know somebody or a law firm can have an investigator or a data miner run the numbers and bolster their case. And now you've got both sides of things, and okay, this is actually a big case, and this is probably worth risking your reputation for. So again, it's more difficult with an outsider for sure, because again, you see the smoke, but you don't know there's fire. Whereas the insider is more likely to see a fire, but just doesn't know the extent of it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And what do you look towards as far as deciding which case is worth pursuing, which case is worth your time? Is there any factors that you see from the whistleblowers that will make you make that determination?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a sliding scale. Our firm will take smaller cases. There's a lot of firms, and rightfully so, you want your case to be big enough to be worth your time. We don't mind necessarily bringing, what we'll call six-figure kind of damages cases if we think the fraud is really clear. Somebody is coming in and maybe there's patient harm, or maybe they've got an email that just says, haha, we know this is fraud, but we're going to do it anyway. I don't mind bringing those cases. These are bad people doing bad things, and I want the government to know about it. But if that, conversely, if you have a $10 million case, then okay, you don't have all the pieces necessarily, but you've got enough here that we think it's worth bringing. That's not a case we would bring if it was six figures, but it might be a case we would bring if it's larger. So, I guess to speak to the whistleblowers out there, you don't need the complete package. We have a lot of cases that are, I was just fired and I saw this happen, but I don't have my emails anymore. I don't have my documents. I don't have my patient records. Oh, but you saw it happen. This is happening. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a tip that the government would not have otherwise. And I don't mind ever bringing that case. So, as long as you have a good faith basis, we're interested. But again, we're going to be poking holes in it if we can. And as soon as we start to see, well, is it possible this? I don't know. We know you saw this, but maybe it went to the biller and then they fixed it. Do you think that's possible? Yeah, it's possible. Then you start to wonder, okay, is this a case we can bring? But, most of our cases, you have a very confident relator who knows what they saw and knows it's worth looking into. And, the government wants to hear about it. They'd rather you bring a potential case and they get the chance to investigate than to never hear about it. And then, they just miss the boat on it.
Okay, that's interesting. And when it comes to like cases, is there ever a smoking gun, like one thing that the whistleblower could bring to your attention that could pretty much help you move forward with it? Or is it like a layer of different things to build up to make you say, hey, I want to move forward with this?
Mm-hmm. I wish there were more smoking gun cases. They happen. They're wonderful. They're the greatest thing ever.
Right.
Usually it's an email. Usually there's an email where somebody says, hey, this is wrong. And it's, the response is very clearly, we know that it's wrong, but we're going to do it anyway. Which, it doesn't have a lot, but it still happens more than you probably expect because it's people, they're talking out of school, insider, oh, well, I know that this is wrong, but this is how we get paid kind of stuff is usually their explanation. So every once in a while we have something like that. But yeah, it's rare. It's more, you just got to kind of piece everything together usually. And again, sometimes the government will go out and talk to witnesses. Sometimes they'll get those emails. Sometimes it's just clear from the documentation. We are always billing for this very expensive procedure, but when you look at the patient records, we're not doing that, right? So every case is very different. But yeah, I wish we had more of those smoking guns. Those are, the big cases. They know, like, don't put anything in email, which is also a sign.
Right.
Now, I think it's worth mentioning the hottest smoking gun is one you're not allowed to tell us about, which is legal advice. We have a lot of people who come to us and say, "Oh my God, the lawyer looked at this." I say, "Don't stop talking. You cannot tell me about this." Well,
Okay.
what if the lawyer put in a letter, "You cannot do this. This is illegal." We're not allowed to know about it. Government's not allowed to know about it. This is covered under a privilege, and if we ever find out your case is out, we're out. So unfortunately, we have a lot of people who think they have a smoking gun, and it's one we're never allowed to see, which is frustrating. But
yeah,
it is what it is. These are the rules of the game. So
yeah, I can imagine how frustrating that can be, especially if you have a smoking gun. It's easier. And Jason, I noticed that you've spoken publicly about PPP fraud, and your firm has handled data-driven matters related to PPP. For the whistleblowers or potential whistleblowers out there, could you just explain what the Paycheck Protection Program is?
Sure. So that's the program I was referring to earlier, where the government, it was the beginning of the pandemic, and it very hastily issued a number of rules and sent out hundreds of billions of dollars to small businesses, saying, figure out how many employees you have, and we're basically going to fund your payroll for the next 2.5 months, because they didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. There were all kinds of rules attached: who was eligible, who wasn't. And then that was in March, April of 2020. that continued on early 2021, and then they had a second round and they issued more money. But these rules were stricter and clearer because now the pandemic was clearing up. There was not the rush. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of success bringing cases against companies that, had they read the rules, they should have known not eligible. But then there are also companies who did know they were not eligible and they applied. And then kind of your classic, if you look in the news, there are a lot of stories about people with fictional companies who are, buying Lamborghinis and taking exotic vacations, and most of them are going to jail. But our bread and butter is kind of your actual existing company that never had any business getting a loan in the first place.
I see. Now, Jason, 10 years from now, do you think a typical whistleblower will still be an insider, or will more FCA cases originate from analysis, competitors, and technology? What do you see in the future for the modern day whistleblower?
Well, I do think AI could make a huge difference, and it's who knows where AI is going to be 10 years from now. I mean, it's just the last couple of years, it's advanced significantly. I think at the end of the day, there is still a place for your classic whistleblower. I think your classic whistleblower continues to be the key witness to a lot of things. I mean, I have a case, with such a small company, there were 4 people, and 3 of them were involved in the fraud, and the 4th was my whistleblower. Wow. There's just no world where the government ever would have known. I mean, no matter how advanced your AI is, unless, we're in a state, where the government has access to everybody's documents and information and things, and hopefully we never get to that point. So the insider is always going to be the most valuable relator, but I also think that there will be more and more of these data miners, more AI relators. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly plenty of room for both, because there's always going to be fraud out there. Okay.
Thanks for that, Jason. And for someone who has discovered something that does not look right, but that person isn't sure whether it raises fraud or not, what's the logical first step in that person's shoes?
That's an easy one. That's talk to a lawyer. So most lawyers who do this kind of work, ourselves included, we're contingency fee lawyers. So free consultation. We talk to you, we'll research it. We want it to be a case, right? We only make money if it is a case and we win that case. So you can come to us and we'll tell you, oh, actually, here's why this is not a problem. Or actually, yeah, I do think this is a problem. So there's no risk to talking to a lawyer. There's no harm in it. A good lawyer should be able to tell you your risks of bringing a case. We have certainly a number of people who come to us. I say, yeah, this is a case, but here's why you may not want to do it. Right? You're a 30-year-old physician in a small community. Is this worth it to you for what I think is, a low 6-figure case? Because frankly, the risk for most whistleblowers is reputational. And so we can walk them through that. Conversely, we have a lot of whistleblowers who say, I don't care, this is wrong, and I want to report it. I say, okay, well, let's do this. Definitely get legal advice, find out if there's a there, because sometimes people come to us, I just say, hey, you're very worked up here, and I don't think what they're doing is wrong. You're ready to quit, and this is actually a totally fine thing that you're seeing here. So, yeah, I think that should always be step one.
Okay, sounds good. I came across a Facebook Facebook group profile, and in the comments, it was specifically for whistleblowers. And in the comments, the whistleblowers was just saying, hey, these guys are trying to ruin my life. I just want to do the right thing and just move forward with, letting these guys know like the wrong thing that's happening in this organization. So I'm glad you shared that. Thanks for that.
Yeah, whistleblowers are they're a different type of person, right? And they're hyper focused on what's the right thing. And I talk to a lot who are surprised that they have spotted something wrong, and they go to their boss and say, oh, hey, I'm here to help you. You should fix this. Right. And then they're surprised when they get fired, right? The boss doesn't want this whistleblower in house. and they don't get it. And it's like, well, because not everybody's like you. Not everybody is trying to do the right thing all the time. And this is a very clear example. So most of our clients are people who have been fired, but certainly if you're still working there and you're not sure, ideally you talk to a lawyer before you talk to your boss, but it's rare. I think most people think, I'm doing what's best for the company, and then the retaliation starts. And that's when they start to piece together, oh, this might actually be intentional.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, wow. Jason, thank you so much for coming on against the fraud, and we really appreciate your time. And yeah, I think this is really helpful for potential whistleblowers and whistleblowers also, to get them more information about what they should do next, and just the details and nuggets you share. If somebody wants to reach you, how can they reach out to you?
Sure. Well, again, my name's Jason Marcus. My law firm is Bracker and Marcus. We're in Atlanta, but we file cases all over the country. And my website is fcacounsel.com. So False Claims Act, FCA, COUNSEL.com.
Okay, perfect. And we'll leave all the contact details in the actual video. And yes, thank you everyone for joining another episode of Against the Fraud, and we will speak to you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph.